How are corporations using AI to manage their people? We're going to talk about it on today's episode. Hey, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. There's no fluff on this podcast, just the stuff that actually works, and in terms of today's news, the stuff that doesn't actually work. We'll jump into it, but before we do, here's a business that sponsored today's episode. Check out this quick ad. We'll be back soon. Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket. All right, so I promise this is my last AI video for a while. We gotta spice it up a little bit, get a little diversity in the podcast content. And I know as of late, there's been a lot of conversation on AI on the show, not just with guests, but even some of my own content I've been putting on here. And it's not intentional, and I'll go ahead and I'll give the disclaimer that if you listen long term, it's probably not much of a disclaimer. You probably don't believe me at this point, but nothing against AI. I like AI. I have a premium ChatGPT membership. I use AI. It's cool, you know. I feel like this is overly how do you do, fellow kids, by the way, of me being like, hey, I love AI. I have a membership, you know, kind of like the I have a black friend stereotype, little cliche comment. So, you know, but for real, I do not have an issue with AI. And if you're listening for the first time, you're probably thinking this dude totally has something against AI. But anyway, I bring this up only because we've had so many episodes that have been on AI as of late. And if you're sick of it, good news. I'm gonna really try to talk about something else. But this thing got me so hot reading this yesterday. I got so angry about this, and it got me so frustrated that I thought, okay, I got to talk about this and do some content on this, and then we're going to move on from it, and you know what have you. So, you know, AI is constantly being iterated, constantly being used. I've talked about it a number of times on the podcast. It's a very exciting tool for many people. And many, I suppose, savvy business owners have realized how much money it can save them by using AI. In fact, I saw someone post a video, or excuse me, not a video, they put up a post today on some of their favorite tools to use to run their business. And like literally every single one was AI. It was like for content, here's this AI content thing. For post, here's this AI post thing. For video, here's this. It was all AI. And I was like, dude, like, man, do we have any like actual, like anything that's not AI? But this is the world we live in. You know, we're realizing how useful it is, how exciting it is. And, you know, that's fine. Unfortunately, though, we are seeing it being used in ways that are there's a bit more chatter about these ways. In fact, coincidentally to this episode, there's quite a few posts going up on this person, this AI influencer who, quote, went to Wimbledon, I guess is like the headline. And it's this young, beautiful, blonde woman who is totally AI generated. And it's part of this trend of AI influencers that, get people to buy a certain product. But apparently this personality reached fever pitch and was all over social media yesterday, all over social media today. Lots of people talking about it is a good thing, all those different things. But so totally coincidental to that whole AI conversation. A friend of mine he texted me yesterday. He holds a senior leadership position at a major local company. And let me pull up this message that he was sent. So he was given his, where is this thing? I literally just had it in front of me. Hang on. So this went out in part of their, I guess, quarterly reports or what have you, but, he and several thousand others were sent this task to do. And using AI isn't an uncommon thing for, these larger corporations. I have lots of friends who work in these corporations who they have to report on how they're using AI and how they're including AI and all these things. But anyway, so this individual received this message that is titled Reflections on Job Satisfaction. And he texted this to me with the disclaimer of, like, this is the corpo dystopian hell that I'm living. um, Someone very much disillusioned by how far corporations are going to cut costs and to really try to run a business as efficiently and cost effectively as possible. So, back in the day, your manager, your boss would hopefully sit down with you and say, "Hey, how are things going? How you liking your job?" Well, corporations have found out you don't have to do that anymore. It's not cost effective. It's not, it's there's better ways to do it, I guess. So this guy gets this message. It's called Reflections on Job Satisfaction, and it reads, sometimes it's helpful to spend time understanding more about what makes you happy or recentering on it if you already have some idea. This Copilot prompt can help you walk through some reflection on who you are and how it might help you do your job better. And then here's the prompt. Help me identify what aspects of my job bring me the most satisfaction. Ask me reflective questions to uncover what energizes me at work and what my strengths are. Let's walk through the answers together. To take this one more level, add this prompt next. Help me use those results to make my role as a blank better. This got me so angry when I read this because if you don't know, I have a very long history in leadership and leadership consulting, talent retention, talent development. My first consulting job was in a leadership consulting firm. And prior to that, I mean, my whole professional upbringing has centered around leadership development and culture. So I feel very strongly about this. I feel very strongly about this topic. And reading this, I was pretty aghast at the thought of companies now not understanding it not clicking how valuable it is to have someone who engages their team members and develops them. Now, this particular company, it doesn't quite surprise me to hear about because I know this is also a particular company that uses a very simple 1 to 5 rating scale in terms of annual reviews. And this is the same company where a leader once shared that they don't give out fives because fives mean that you're perfect and nobody's perfect, while also admitting that pay raises at this company are attached to the rating scale that you get. And if you want to get a meaningful pay raise, you have to get a 5. So is it that not anyone's perfect, so no one gets 5? Or is that just what we say to try and cut costs, to try to keep our overhead down? I don't know. So, anywho, reading this got me really angry. It got me really frustrated. I've thought a little bit about this, and let's just talk about effective leadership for a second. Great bosses, great leaders, they are people who understand that your team members are your biggest asset. That these are people who are often customer facing. They are the people who are often doing things that you yourself no longer want to do or no longer have the time to do. And that these are people who have chosen to work for your business and who are showing up day in and day out to contribute to your bottom line. I have many thoughts on what your value should be as a leader when it comes to your team members, what your perspective should be on your team members. One of them being that when I hire someone, we are collaborating towards a common goal. For me, there's no ego involved in it. There's no, reputation assigned to it of, hey, you work for me. I'm the boss. I make the calls here. I don't see it that way. I see it as, hey, yeah, we're collaborating towards a common goal. We're trying to make something happen together. You're bringing your skill set to the team, and it's either a skill set that I don't have at all, or you're delivering on something that, again, I don't have the capacity to do any longer. But for me, there is just an implicit dignity for anyone that I work with in that there is not this weird hierarchical, I feel like that this is kind of like an older generation kind of thing that, and maybe this is I'm sure this does still exist. I think I'm being probably a little too aspirational about this and thinking that, no one operates that way anymore. I mean, I'm sure people absolutely do. But this is the way that I do business. Some other concepts that I've found to be true is that people will stay in a job if they like the work that they do, but people will quit a job no matter how much they enjoy the work if they have a boss that makes their life hell. And too often, we don't understand this concept that the person you work for is the most likely person to decide the productivity and outputs of that individual. Now, this isn't to gloss over that everyone has different levels of ambition. This is not to imply that there aren't bad employees out there. I do think that more often than not, when someone's a bad, quote, employee, that it is uncommunicated expectations. It's an impossible job. It's the person who hires and says, I'm looking for a diamond in the rough. I'm looking for someone who can do everything. And then they find out that the person who can, do everything is actually not that great at any one thing. And it's not really the fault of the person who applied to the job. I mean, they're trying to make ends meet. So I do think sometimes there's some miscommunications there. I do think sometimes people, for whatever reason or walks of life that they're in, that they aren't always operating at their best potential, their best outputs. I even hate using that word outputs because it makes it sound like people are like widgets that get just, we measure them by their outputs. But in terms of like capacity for good work, I was just talking to a friend of mine who I think either they had to let someone go or they put in their 2 weeks notice, but this person like missed meetings, like was never around, was never showing up, was just going through a hard time in life and ultimately ended up quitting. So what I'm saying here is not that those kinds of situations don't exist. They do. But I also know that there are people who could thrive in one place and yet they're withering on the vine in a job where they're not valued, they're not taken care of, they're not acknowledged, their giftings aren't being properly utilized, they are being applied as like a widget or a mass. Everyone just does the same things. There's no independence or individuality to how this person contributes to the work. And unfortunately, what the data tells us is that these people are either going to quit or they are going to be fairly disengaged at work and not creating meaningful outcomes. Gallup has a report that they do. I think for a time they were doing it every year, and then maybe during COVID, they took like a few weeks, maybe like a 3-year break or something. I can't remember, but Gallup has a report called The State of the Workplace. It's a really great report. It talks about basically how happy people are in the workplace and puts like a dollar amount attached to it. And essentially, what Gallup found was that people who are disengaged at work, who don't care about the outcomes, who are actively looking for other jobs, it's the person who just clocks in on a Monday morning and they're like, "Oh man, I'd rather be somewhere else." They're working for the weekend. These people are costing companies $1.2 trillion a year. And I think sometimes as leaders, we have a really hard time with these statistics because we fail to see the responsibility that we have in this whole conversation. It's like I was talking to a woman, which doesn't matter that she's a woman. It's just, this is literally the situation I was in. I was talking to a woman who was running a business who she had just lost an employee. And as we were chatting, she said that she had actually had her entire team, about 10 people, turn over the last year. And she had this comment that was like, yeah, millennials are so hard to work with, implying that, all the employees were millennials and they quit. And this was like 7-8 years ago. Actually, no, this probably would have been like about 4 or 5 years ago. Now Gen Zers are the ones that everyone's making fun of and what have you. It's nothing new, honestly. But she says something like, she says something to the effect of, yeah, millennials are so hard to work with. And then I just kind of politely said, yeah, I mean, in my experience, when your whole team turns over, it's not millennials. Usually it's the boss, which she seemed to take kind of personal. Now, I don't think this person probably looked in a mirror and realized, oh, wait, it is me. I think this person probably was looking for someone to tell them what they wanted to hear, and probably nothing came of it. But I do think that is typically our approach to leadership, is that it's the employee's fault. They're not getting it. Why aren't they happy here? Or in the case of a boss that I had, and I talked about this on an episode recently, it was a very toxic work environment. They ordered fajitas for lunch, and my boss seemed stunned that anyone would be unhappy in this job when we had just spent a lot of money on fajitas. I mean, I just remember it was like a disconnect. Like, she genuinely seemed stunned that anyone would be unhappy after getting fajitas for lunch. I mean, this is why we have the meme around the pizza party, is because there are people out there who legitimately think, I did a pizza party. Why aren't they happy? Why isn't this working? Why aren't they producing? Like, why is my team not high performing? I don't get it. Like, what's their problem? And what's weird to me is that this seems like such common sense, and yet I've worked with a significant number of businesses where leaders did not understand this. And we continue to see this years later in different forms, like this job satisfaction message that goes out where, and this probably came from a place of good intentions. This probably came from a place of someone on an HR team who said, hey, we have our annual reviews. Wouldn't it be great if we encouraged our team members to do some self-reflecting on their own? Yeah, that's a good idea. Hey, let's send an AI prompt they can use. I mean, it was probably an offhand thing that someone thought to do. Unfortunately for the employee, it doesn't always get perceived that way. And in the case of this person who sent this on to me, he was very angry and upset that my words, what seemed like a company just checking a box to keep people engaged enough to continue to produce. See, leadership is time intensive. Leadership costs you money because it means not just doing an approach that is for everybody. It means that you don't have a one size fits all approach. It means that you have to actually have real conversations on what makes your team members tick and their aspirations and where they want to go. and what they want to do. Now, again, those of you who've been in leadership, this all seems like common sense. But I remember working with a leader 8, 9 years ago, and the conversation like went somewhere where he was like, I don't know anything about my team members. I don't know anything about what they want to do or their aspirations or what have you. But they don't know me. I don't know them. And that's kind of how I prefer it. And we had done what was called a 360, which is a very common test. It's an assessment where people basically anonymously evaluate you as a boss and they write comments and things like that. Most people, by the way, get very positive. I've probably done 200, 300 of these. Most people get very positive, like 7 out of 10 kind of comments. Hey, it could be a little bit better here. Hey, this could have been a little nicer, et cetera. Even with it being anonymous, every now and then you get, rarely someone with like 1s and 2s out of 10 that are like, this is not a great boss. And this wasn't even the case for this individual, but there were a lot of comments on this boss doesn't really quite know me. It's not a good relationship. I don't know how long I want to work here, yada, yada. Well, so long story short, part of our conversation was, hey, you need to get to know your team. And again, this feels like common sense, but I remember he was like, well, how do I do that? And I was like, well, I mean, if I were you, everyone reports in at 8 a.m. I would spend the first 10, 15 minutes, just make the rounds, checking everybody. Hey, how's it going? Do you need anything from me today? How you doing today? This is not a shocker of a thought. This is not a game-breaking idea. He was stunned. He did not understand this concept. And he was like, so you want me to, it was like explaining small talk to an alien. He was like, so you want me to go around and talk to them? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, and like, do what exactly? Like, what do I do? And it was like such a foreign, I found myself being like, am I the idiot here? Like, this isn't, not that he was an idiot. I'm just joking. But I found myself being like, am I dumb? Like, do I not understand something about leadership here? Because this just makes sense to me. Now, what I have found is that some of the best leaders that I know have habits around this. One of my favorite leaders is Dr. Kathy Pillow Price, who works for the University of Arkansas. She formerly worked for Arkansas Children's Hospital, and she had check-ins. Very simple, 5-minute. Hey, do you need anything from me? Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Now, again, I found that people are really good at understanding concepts like this, but failing miserably in the execution. And unfortunately, sometimes when leaders do this, they're only checking the box of asking how you're doing before they get to what they really want or need from you. And I even had a boss like this who he would call and very quickly, briskly, hey, how are you? Good. Hey, so I need you. And like, before you could even like get more than a sentence, before more than a word out about how you were doing, it was like, good, good, good. Hey, I need you to, like, he was moving so fast and at such a speed that, now, do I think maliciously he didn't care? No, I don't think that. I think this 9 times out of 10, this kind of stuff's just personality types. But Kathy Pillow Price, she would ask, hey, how are you? What do you need from me today? What can I do to help you today? And then just stop and just wait and get an actual genuine answer. And I have found that when people understand how to lead that way, they become more natural at it. But more importantly, the team members start to understand the implicit trust that's there in the business. And with that, there's a really great concept called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The basic premise, and some people get this backwards, they get this confused, and it's a very simple concept that's used in education, but it works great in leadership. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically a pyramid. You can Google this. And it's basically a pyramid where at the top is self-actualization. You can think of it as like living out your potential or, being all the things that you know you're capable of being. Think about your life over the last 6 weeks and think about a day where you were like, dude, I was pinging on, I was, all cylinders were firing. Like I was doing exactly what I wanted to do and I was making it happen and doing good work and what have you. So that's self-actualization. They may call it something different today. I'm not sure, but that's at the very top. Well, at the very bottom is at the base of the pyramid is your physical needs. Like s- actually having food, shelter, things like that. In the work sense, we'd also say like enough money to survive, able to pay your rent, et cetera. Above that is like emotional stability and security. And, am I safe? Physically, am I safe? But emotionally, am I safe? Is my manager going to scream at me? And the whole point of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a lot of people misunderstand this pyramid as what's most important. So, oh yeah, physical needs are most important, and self-actualization is smaller. It's at the top, so it's not as important. And that's not how to understand this pyramid. The correct way to think of this pyramid is to reach the things at the top, you have to satisfy the things beneath them. So to self-actualize, to operate at your best, your physical needs have to be met. So what this means is you're not going to have an Einstein, incredibly efficient, amazing, all-star employee by someone who lives out of their car, by someone who doesn't have enough money to pay for their rent. This is why I talk a lot on the podcast about pay. It's not a political thing. It's just knowing there's so much great research and so much great leadership data on how people perform according to the pay that they get. Now, society, politically, we've made this like an entitlement thing or a greed thing, or, you have bosses who get mad at employees who ask for a pay raise, or, I thought you were here for the team. I didn't know, who were manipulative and things like that. That's all a cultural thing that's been applied on this. But research, we actually look at the data. We know that people who perform at their best have their needs met. And more importantly, there's emotional stability in the workplace, meaning they feel like they fit in, they feel like they're an individual, they feel like their perspective matters. All of these things have to happen. These boxes have to be ticked for the person to be self-actualized and performing at their best abilities. Unfortunately, we have too many businesses who they really do just check the box, and they send out mass emails and AI prompts to try to get people to become the best form of who they are. Now, maybe in 5 years, AI is just so insane. It's like a movie where you can't tell who's real and who's AI. I don't know. I mean, it'd be kind of crazy. Unfortunately, in today's world, AI cannot replace a great conversation with your boss. And the intentionality that a boss can bring to the table, that a leader can bring to the table, in making sure that their team members, that their needs are met and that they are actually positioned to thrive. Hey, that's today's Good Advice podcast episode. I appreciate you listening today. If you're a first-time listener, don't forget to continue to check out the podcast by following or subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen. I do appreciate you supporting the podcast. We do have our ads at the start of each episode, along with our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Thank you to those of you who supported the podcast long term. Again, I appreciate you. That's today's Good Advice. We'll catch you later.